Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is a weekend review for the week ending November 11th, 2022. We're looking at a monthly chart of DXY, the US dollar index. You have a monthly bearish reversal pattern. This is a harami, where you've got this large expansion in price, followed by a doji or indecision, followed by a break below the doji, the very next candle. It's a 2-candle reversal pattern. And now you're looking at price pulling back. You zoom into the weekly, see the uptrend is broken, expansion in volatility, a TD 913.9 sell setup into that supply line, close below the 20. This is a change in character, and we're looking for price to come and test the bottom of these bands. Take a look at TNX. You have a similar 913.9 sell setup, close below the 10 on the weekly after being outside the top of the band. Again, 25 to 43, almost a double in price. This is over, and now you've got to look for a reversion to mean. That means down here at 33. And so if you look at time as well, this is the first week in the buy setup, whereas the dollar was on week 4, where the dollar is implying another 5 weeks of downside. TNX is implying another 8 weeks of downside. And these two factors fundamentally are why you're going to see rallies in the equity market and the gold and silver market. So we're going to take a look at those two charts now. We're going to look at the dollar, the TNX real quick on the daily, and you can see a breakdown, a back test of this channel. And so what's going to happen is a pullback here to this line or this longer term trend line right down here. So 33, 32, and then we go from there. Taking a look at SPY, we've got a breakout of this descending wedge pattern, falling wedge, breakout, on bullish divergence. ADX not confirming, but back here I just want to point out, just like at the COVID lows, ADX goes all the way to 0 as price gets back up, and then ADX flips up and the momentum really starts to get going. So, it's just because ADX is at 0, it's just telling you that there is no trend right now, and that is true. Price has been stuck between 362 and 421 for almost 5-6 months at this point, and I expect that to continue. I expect price to find supply up here at 414. If we zoom in and look at all these daily charts, this is a close outside the top of the bands 2 days in a row. That's a breakout. ADX is pointing up. Look for price to come challenge the 200. And possibly, like I was saying up here, this 431 level. Price will remain in this range until the end of the year. I don't see that changing. One thing we can look at here, and let's turn after hours off, a capture of the 200 on the daily. So IWM is leading markets higher. Closing above this high here at 185 is very bullish. PPO pointing up, ADX pointing up. Weekly chart, is this a breakout? I don't really know. It's really tough to say because I can draw this a few different ways. What I will say is it's still inside the bands on the weekly chart. And until she can get above the 50 on the weekly chart, again, range bound. And ADX is confirming that. Now, if she wants to break out this week, ADX will start pointing up. PPO will get back above or towards this 0 line. You do have a bullish divergence, a lower low, and a higher low in momentum. Let's keep going through the list here. QQQ, the weakest of the ETFs, did recapture the 200 on the weekly, still have that bullish divergence, looking for price to rally back up here to about 300. You do now have a left shoulder, head, right shoulder type of setup. Neckline being 284. Bulls need to stay above that 284 neckline. If they do, the projected target, you take the neckline to the bottom, is up here at 320. So that's definitely in play. Again, a rally to the 200 is about all you're going to get on these weaker indexes. Take a look at SMH, already confirming that left shoulder, head, right shoulder, escaping this descending channel that she's been in for the entire year. The entire year, she escaped that channel. She escaped it back here just to give it right back up. So it's real important to see if this holds or not. ADX is certainly pointing higher. PPO pointing higher. Volume on the breakout is all confirming. What I'm looking for is a rally into this 228 level and then a pullback. And again, must hold the 208 level, the 209 level. And as you can tell, just a lot weaker on the entire year, really, but stronger than QQQ. So if I were to rank these, it would be IWM is the best, then SPY or SMH, and then QQQ. No divergence here. ADX all the way back at 0 already, and a recapture of the 20 on the weekly. So again, gotta hold that 209 level for this to be real. Just like back here, captured it for 3 weeks, gave it up. You could rally all the way back up to the 50 here at 240, and then give it all the way back. Don't want to see that. You just now have the 510 bull cross. You had the look below and fail below the 200. So again, that's the line in the sand. Absolutely cannot go below the 200, but bulls want to see the 20 hold. Take a look at gold on the weekly. This is exactly what you want to see if you're a gold bull. This aligns with the dollar failing. And again, a rally back here up into the 50. The bands here are pointing down, and the bottom one is finally pointing up. So pointing up is a requirement. But again, this top one pointing down means that we could be going sideways like we have here. So look for this to remain in this range, the same range that's been in since July to August. These two, high lows. But again, this is what you want to see when you see the dollar collapse. These two are negatively correlated. This is where you would put your money, and if you, so we'll keep moving on. Same thing here with bonds, but bonds are just underperforming equities big time, absolutely big time. So bonds are just a strong avoid for me. Again, look how long she stayed below the bottom of these bands. When you close below or above the bands, it signals the beginning of a breakout. And so what you've got on a lot of these charts is just that. Take a look at XLE. Double top setup, closed outside the top of the bands 3 weeks in a row. Double top setup, pull back here on the first stab. Momentum went down. Again, weekly momentum pointing straight up. ADX pointing straight up. So this is trend mode and could certainly rally all the way back up here to 103. And my high side target on XLE is up here at 118 to 120. Up here. XLF is another one that's going to be leading. And what you have here is this very, very key pivot that you've tested. This resistance level from the 07 financial crisis, came up to it in 2018, came up to it in 2019, got above it in 2020, now retested in 2022, and no one wants to touch it. While it did that, momentum reverted to mean, back to the 0 line from 11, and is now curling up. Histogram is showing that. And again, this is a very, very bullish looking chart. You zoom into the weekly, potential expanding pattern, but a recapture of the 50 is certainly not bearish. You zoom into the daily, closing outside the top of the bands is very bullish. These bands are telling me a lot higher prices. And again, XLF is 10% of IWM. And if you zoom in to the leaders within XLF, like JP Morgan, you can see they've already captured the 200. And this is looking like a repair job of the bear market. So you got to see this large thrust up. Now you got to see price come back into the 200, into the 50, into the 20, and it hold. And something like that looks more like Netflix, right? Netflix is what I would play. So large decline phase, go sideways for a long time, let them accumulate, frustrate everyone out of the trade, and then break above. And Netflix is, has a potential target up here at 375. So this was a great setup here that I talked about all week. Buying this pullback into the 20, into the 200. looking to sell this gap fill. Some other names that I like: NVDA breaking out, closing above the top of the bands. Again, ADX confirming a little left shoulder, head, right shoulder. As long as she stays above this 145 neckline, you've got a breakout. You look at the weekly chart, ADX is at 0, saying no trend. So really range bound. And that's kind of what you see. You know, broke below this low, went below the 200, trapped everyone down here, and then springed higher. No weekly high or low yet. Really straight off the lows, we're going straight up. So this is a name I like into earnings. They are this week, and I will be trimming some into earnings. Another name I like, and this name I like a lot more, is CROX. You got the left shoulder, you got the head, you got the right shoulder. Neckline here at 84, 82. As long as she stays above the 85 area, this is a breakout, and the target is up here at 156. Now this is a gravestone doji, and she has come from 67 all the way up to 100. So a pullback to start the week is very likely, as long as it's on declining bear volume. I'm looking for the 10 and the 5, these yellow and this orange line, to hold at this neckline, and something like this to happen. Putting in that bull flag look. To give us the energy to break out up here. Again, if you look at the weekly, closed above the top of the weekly bands, that's a breakout. This is a bull flag on the weekly. ADX is pointing up, PPO is above the 0 line, and this momentum looks like it has a lot left in the tank. Volume confirming the bottoming pattern. This is exactly what you want to see: a large decline, sideways, large base, breakout. Another name I want to look at, CGC, performing extremely well, held the July lows. So unlike all these other names that bottomed in October, like the same ETFs that we've been looking at this entire video, CGC bottomed in July, set a higher low, and is now marching higher, breaking above the weekly 20, which she'd stayed below for 17 months in a row. Expansion in price, in volatility, and volume, most importantly. The volume here is not to be ignored. You look at the monthly chart, you have a high, you have a higher low, and now you're working on a higher high. And again, 430 is the gateway to start this move, to start it. Okay, 20s pointed up, 50s pointed up. This neckline here, you could argue this is a left, this is a head, this is a right. I don't really like that type of inverse head and shoulders pattern. I like a more horizontal one like I just showed you in CROX. But the bottom line is you declined, you based for 6 months, and now you're breaking above that base on volume. Now what you do have here is declining volume. So what you will need to see is that this pattern here, where you've had an increase in bull volume, that has to continue. ADX is at 60, so this move is a bit extended, okay? But again, could go all the way up to 80s. And there's a ton of gaps up here, all the way up to $9. And again, the symmetry on this move is this huge base. If you can find acceptance above 430, does bring in the $9 target. And if you look at the monthly and you talk about mean reversion, a reversion to the 20 on the monthly would be perfectly normal. And if you look at the weekly, close above the top of the band on the weekly on volume, ADX pointing up, PPO pointing up. This is telling me that there is a change in character, and you should watch out because people have been shorting this for a very long time. Almost 4 years, 96% depreciation. But now you can have 100% rallies. So a name that you definitely want to look at and watch. Another name I'll look at is ENPH. Still this large sideways base. PPO coming back to 0 again on the weekly. Monthly PPO trying to get back to 0 from 55, only went to 19. So far, this isn't anything to be concerned about, but range bound is in play. and a pullback all the way down here to 264 is entirely possible before the next leg higher. It's just it's getting a bit long in the tooth from where I sit, and I don't like how the PPO is pointing down. Let's take a look here at a couple other things, and we'll call it a quick video. 1 week ago, retail was piling into puts like never before. Put call ratio was above the high from the 2008 financial crisis. So again, above the 2020, all the way back to 2008, the only other time people were this bearish. And as soon as that happens, the tides switch. Breadth thrust here from, again, S&P 500 closed higher than the prior 4 days. S&P 500 new 1 year low 1 day ago. S&P yesterday's new 4-day high. Blah 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 blah. You can read this, and then they point on the chart every time this happens. This basically only happens at bottoms. Okay, be open to the idea that this is a bottom. You want to look at the best performing Russell stocks. Again, I told you that IWM has been outperforming. I can prove it to you right now. IWM relative to SPY. IWM's outperformed SPY all year. IWM relative to QQQ, outperform all year. Relative to SMH, outperform all year. SMH is taking a pullback here, while the Qs are really just back testing that 200. So it's possible that IWM will outperform QQQ for a long period of time. And then SPY versus TLT, SPY versus DBC. So it's possible that the June low here is when you wanted to start moving out of commodities and back into equities. And SPY versus TLT is telling me we've never gotten the signal to move from equities into bonds. You look at the momentum summary. What you see here on all these charts is momentum is pointing down, while basically every other time frame is pointed up. So it's, again, if we're going to get that breadth thrust to end the bear market, what's going to end up ultimately happening is all these monthlies are going to flip up. And right now you just don't have that. So again, you have to be cautious until the monthly is pointing up. You look at the Q4 performance summary. At the top of the list is CGC, and then APA, NVDA, Exxon, XLE, XLF, SMH, IWM. Okay, NVIDIA is outperforming AMD big time. And here at the bottom of the list is Tesla, the China names, the Bitcoin names. Those are still in a void for me. They will rally. ARK, all of those names, they're going to rally. CRISPR, the leader within ARK, they will rally. They will play catch up, but they are lagging. And it's our job to identify who's leading at the end of these bear markets, because they're really, really going to start to outperform. We'll take a look at that Tesla topping pattern that I was talking about. All right, left shoulder head, right shoulder, double outside weak, outside, outside, boom, and here we are setting this new low. Okay, so it's again, this is hard for me to be bullish on this name until she can get back above this 214 level. And I'd rather just play Netflix. And if you look at it, all of these names, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Meta, the FANG names are all dramatically underperforming IWM. Meta here looks like a bottom's coming. All right, so all these names are going to bottom at the same time. Carvana, these absolute like trash names that just hit a new low relative to the low from 2017 IPO, hit a new low and then reversed on massive volume, just like Google. Google went back to just, the 2020 November levels, hit a new low, and then reversed. All right, so same thing with Meta, right? You're going to get all these names are going to bottom at the same time. All right, and that's really what you're starting to see across the board. And when that happens, that's when all of these stocks will go up in tandem. And it's your job to just identify the ones that are going up the most and then ride those until the trends end. And it's not like we can predict how high or low these things go. It's our job to just look at when they're reversing, when the momentum is waning, and then hop on board. And right now, all of that is being driven by weakness in the yields, weakness in the dollar. The strength in the dollar, strength in the yields is what led to 2022 being an extremely bearish year for equities and bonds alike. And now that that weakness is fading, you have an opportunity to get on the right side of that trade. And it is fading as people are piling into puts at the highest rate possible, as CPI, PPI data is coming out confirming that inflation peaked 5 months ago. So that's all I got. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. And just before I go, I will say, you look for these things on the monthly to revert to zero. PPO is reverted to zero. You get a big thrust, then you get a reversion to zero. You get a corrective pattern during that reversion to zero, and then a thrust higher, revert to zero, thrust higher. And every single one of these has reverted to zero on the monthly time frame. You don't believe me? Go look. IWM's negative. They then curl up. That curl up is what gives you the trend mode. And that's what's going to create the breadth thrust that you're going to see on all of these charts. Again, revert to zero, curl up, revert to zero, curl up. All right, that's the theme, and we'll see you next week.